So my goal with this video is to upgrade a 608 fidget spinner to use an R188 bearing using a bearing adapter. I'm going to use a Yardwerx Dab. This is the fidget spinner right here. This is the Dab in brass. I'm not going to use the brass because I don't want to damage this one. I really like it. I also have it in a stainless steel. You could see that I've actually already removed the bearing from there just because I've done a little bit of testing with this and I didn't want to have a whole video series showing my failures. So the way I was able to remove the bearing from here was I contacted the person that made these. I said, hey, how do I do that? He didn't respond to me. No problem, I could figure it out. I found out that a dime is exact or perfect outer diameter for, sorry, I said nickel. A nickel is the same exact outer diameter of the bearing. So I could push this through, theoretically not damage the spinner. This is a pretty hefty piece of stainless steel, so this should be fine. And then also possibly not even damage the bearing, but I figured in actuality the bearing would break. So what I did was I got a 3-inch desk or 3-inch vise, and I put this socket on one side. The socket, as you can notice, has a diameter, an inner diameter that is larger than the outer diameter of this 608 bearing. So if the bearing were to push through, this this body would be fine, but the bearing would be able to push through. Then I could use another socket to push it through, but in this case, I just used a stack of nickels. I put them in my vise, and I applied a little bit of pressure. It actually took surprisingly little pressure for the bearing to press out. And that's because, as I know now, that this is held in place with adhesive. It's not a press fit. So just that adhesive is holding it in place. So the actual amount of pressure required to push this out was surprisingly little. I have heard of people saying you can use a hair dryer or even acetone to loosen up this adhesive, but that did not work for me. The hair dryer didn't get it out. And then I also didn't want to mess up the bearing, and that's plastic on the inside, so I figured I would try this method and not melt that plastic, and then also not have to mess with any acetone or any nasty chemicals. So here we have it, the spinner body. I'm going to clean this up next just with a little scouring pad and some soapy water, and then I will put this 608 bearing core or spinner core or whatever the thing's called, this 608 to R188 adapter in there, and put it in with some Loctite. It should be all set. Okay, so the vise work is done, and let's see the results. Here we have the original Ronson Speedco bearing. I pressed it out, it works. Here we have the Dab in brass with the original bearing. I have not touched this one. That's the 608 bearing. And now here we have the upgraded Dab with the Kong bearing. So totally successful. I didn't even need any Loctite. This is press fit in there with the original adhesive sort of serving as a buffer. So the main complication here is that the bearings, the 608 bearing, is a little bit wider than the Dab. And that's probably peculiar to this Dab, but it left me with a decision about how far I wanted it to stick out on each side. I tried to get it even, but we're looking at like, you know, half of a millimeter. So using a vise to guide that is really difficult. And I don't know that it's perfect, but it is definitely good enough for my needs. And now I'll do a separate video on this dab because I want to do an official recording of the spin time, but this definitely worked. So now I have a much cleaner bearing in there, a really nice spin. It's a whole lot quieter. And yeah, like really almost no, you know, a little bit of play, but no sound resulting from that play. And when I wobble it like this, there's no feeling of jitter and no loss of speed. And then just doesn't take anything to just push this thing and let it go. You don't have to really whip it. You just give it a little push and it'll just go and go and go. So yeah, that is the Yardwerx Dab spinner with the 608 to R188 conversion. I'll try to scatter in a couple pictures from the vise. The vise is gross and old and greasy. I didn't want to put it on my desk and start doing video with it. So that's it. Thanks for watching. Please drop any questions below.